say product, you guys graduated or you attended from?
We graduated.
Actually did both.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I did both.
So you probably already know a bunch of this. I just wanted to give you a real quick summary of our search process. We, about 3 months ago, as you know, we started a national search. We hired a firm, Ray & Associates, to help us find candidates for the superintendency from all over the country. And we felt that that was very important to have a really big picture. We had, I think, 37 different states represented in our search, and so we were really pleased with that. We would like you to welcome our final candidate, Dan McMinimee. He is from Douglas County. He was a teacher, a coach, and a principal, and a district administrator, and he has 2 kids in Jefferson County schools. So please welcome Daniel McMinimee.
Well, I appreciate you all coming out today. I know there's 1,000 other things going on, and I would like to personally thank Principal Worth. Being a former high school principal, I know this is probably the worst day, or close to the worst day, to try and impact the building with all the senior activities going on. So I really appreciate you opening up your building. And I know you probably have several more meetings lined up this week, but I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you coming out here to give me an opportunity to speak to you and give you my background. So what I'd like to do today, and there's going to be several opportunities hopefully over the next 2 weeks to get to know me a little bit better. And then once the process is final, and hopefully I'm the successful person moving forward, then I really want to dive in with listening and learning about Jeffco schools. Like Jill said, my kids go to Jeffco schools. My son graduated from Columbine High School last year. My daughter is a senior at Chatfield High School this year. I'm a little tired today after a very exciting lacrosse game last evening. We're going to be playing in the semifinals on Saturday, so I'm a very proud parent. My daughter will be graduating next week. So my kids have had an absolutely fabulous experience in Jeffco schools, and that was one of the pieces that made me want to apply for this job. Being a Colorado native, sort of, probably 4 years, I think I was 4 years old when I moved to Colorado. I know the power of Jefferson County schools. In fact, I started my elementary school years at Hackberry Hill Elementary up on 76th and Pierce area. Lived about 10 houses down on Pierce Street from North Arvada Junior High. My mother actually worked in the health room at North Arvada Junior High. So for me, this is kind of coming full circle. Then the final thing is obviously if my kids go to Jeffco schools, I live in the county. I live down by Chatfield Reservoir, and we love the area. We just absolutely love it. So it's really awesome to be here today to talk to you. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about my background so everybody kind of gets that, and then talk a little bit about what we want to do next. And so I'll start in on the background. Like I said, we moved here, I think it was 1966. I attended Hackberry Hill Elementary School from kindergarten through 6th grade. I know that I'm standing here today because of the great work that those teachers did with me at Hackberry Hill Elementary School. I still remember my teacher's name, Mrs. Greaves, my 2nd grade teacher, yanked a knot in my tail, and really, you know, Dan, you need to focus, I need to work with your parents, really was key in putting me on the right track moving forward. You know, Mrs. Marvin, Mr. Vincent, Mr. Phillips. I know all these names because they had a tremendous impact on me, and I know the power of a great teacher in a classroom with kids, and that's what really drove me to become a teacher myself. And so I think it's really important that we all remember that where the great work happens is in buildings like this. And so that was why when we had an opportunity to talk about, well, we want to go out and meet people in the community. Where do you want to go, Dan? And I said, I think it's really critical that the first place I go to is a school and have an opportunity to meet people in a school. Because I want the message to be, it's about what happens in the schools for kids with great people surrounding them. So I think that's really important to know about me. So my father worked for the city of Arvada. He was a planner for the city of Arvada, and after my 6th grade year, he had an opportunity to go to work down in Littleton as a community developer. So we moved down to Littleton. I attended Euclid Junior High and Heritage High School. So again, just right across the river from Columbine High School. I had several friends that live in that Coventry area that's right on the border. So I know a ton of people that went to Columbine, played college football with several people that went to Columbine. And so I've always known the power of the schools in this district. After high school, I attended the University of Southern Colorado. It's now CSU Pueblo. I went there to play football. And quite honestly, I thought I was going to get a chance at being a professional football player. But that really didn't happen, obviously. So I got into education because I love sports. That's what drove me through high school. And I got into education because I want to make a difference for kids. And I love being a part of a team. And so at the University of Southern Colorado, I was there for 3 years. And after my junior year, they decided that they were going to cut football. So I had a choice. I could stay at the University of Southern Colorado and finish, or I could go somewhere else and have an opportunity to continue to play football. And I wanted to do that. So I went to Adams State down in Alamosa. Finished my career down there, got my PE K through 12 degree. I was up in Cherry Creek schools doing my student teaching, Cherry Hills Village, and also Overland High School. Had an opportunity to start coaching there, track and field. The next year I stayed as a full-time sub in the Cherry Creek School District, and I taught at virtually, well, a lot of schools. Worked almost every single day at elementary schools. That was when 4-track first started. And had an opportunity to be in elementary schools, coaching at the high school, and loved it. At the end of that year, I thought, you know what, I really want to give being a college football coach a shot. I also want to get my master's. So I contacted my college coach and asked if there was an opportunity to come back down to Adams State and coach. Went back down there, started my master's work, and also coached there for that year. We made it to the NAIA National Championship game. It was fabulous. Again, being a part of a team, getting to have my master's work started. At the end of that year, or actually all during that year, the woman that I ended up marrying was up here in law school in Denver, and so I decided I wanted to move back to Denver to be with her, and I was fortunate enough to land an opportunity at Fairview High School. And those of you that know college or high school football in the state of Colorado, there's 2 huge names in terms of coaches in the state of Colorado that I'm aware of, and I know there's more, but Fred Tissone and Sam Pagano at Fairview High School are 2 huge names. So to have an opportunity to work at Fairview High School was, something that I really wanted to do. So I went up there. I taught at Nevin Platt Junior High School, coached at Fairview High School, coached about 7 sports at the junior high school. At the end of that year, you all know what happened in about 1990. There was a lot of budget cuts in districts, and I was going to be ripped out of the district. So I contacted the person that was my college coach down at Southern Colorado, who was at Oregon State, and asked if I could have an opportunity to be a graduate assistant football coach at Oregon State. Got that opportunity. Got married, my wife graduated from law school, got in 2 separate cars and drove from Denver to Corvallis, Oregon. I wasn't even sure if Oregon was above or below Washington. That's how naive we were. But what a great opportunity for us to grow and spread our wings as a couple, and really no safety net. So we moved to Corvallis. I started into Oregon State as a graduate assistant football coach, working on my master's. My wife got into a small law firm in Salem, and things were going great until about Thanksgiving. The Pac-10 Coach of the Year, Dave Cragthorpe, from the year before, got fired on Thanksgiving. So cured me of wanting to be a Division I football coach pretty quickly. Ended up going back to Salem, worked at a small town outside of Salem, Silverton High School. I was a personal finance and American government teacher, half-time, coaching sports there. At the same time, I was also an elementary PE teacher in Salem, Oregon. So I'd drive out to Silverton, teach those classes, come back to Salem, teach elementary PE, drive back to Silverton and coach. And did that for 2 years. And then I had an opportunity to go into Salem and be a full-time elementary teacher. And I absolutely loved those little kids. It was a great experience teaching little kids. At the same time, I was coaching at Willamette University, so it was a really interesting perspective to work with a kindergartner during the day in a kindergarten area or in a PE classroom, and then go coach college football players. But you know what? They're really similar. So, I mean, it's all about relationships and working with people and being a part of a team. And so it was, it was a great time to do that. At the same time, I was getting my administrative degree, and I ended up landing an assistant principal job at Sprague High School. It's one of the biggest schools in the state of Oregon. It's a great school. Academics, athletics, and activities are the 3 things they're founded on, which that's what the basis of a great school is. I was there for 3 years. Then I went to a rival high school and was their athletic director, which was another interesting dynamic. And then I had an opportunity to go back to Sprague as a principal. During that time, we had 2 kids that you have heard about already. They were in kindergarten and 1st grade, and we decided as a family, you know what? If we're ever going to move back to Colorado, because we had ties back here, we need to start looking for opportunities there. So I was lucky enough to land a job in Douglas County at Rock Canyon High School, which was at that point high school number 7. It was a dirt field. There was nothing there. No foundation, nothing. I had the very unique and awesome opportunity to go to Rock Canyon High School number 7, and start with a group of 8th graders and build a school using all of the leverage and power of having a great staff. So hired every single staff member, worked with every single family and student in that feeder area, had 200 kids the first year, grew to 400, grew to 800, grew to 1,200. And in 2007, that school was lucky enough to be the number 2 school in the state of Colorado in that 5280 magazine. And I know the reason that happened is because of things we did with 8th graders. And the power of getting parents involved, getting students involved, getting teachers involved, and being, we're this team that's focused on this goal. And it wasn't to be in 5280 magazine, by the way. What it was to be an outstanding school that served kids' needs and gave kids opportunities to be successful. And that's what that school is founded on, and I am so proud of what that school is today as well. And I truly believe it's because of the work we did back in 2002 through 2007. At the end of 2007, the then superintendent, Jim Christensen, came to me and said, look, I'm going to have a director of schools position, Dan. I really want you to consider that. And I thought, my kids are getting a little bit older, 6th, 7th grade, and I want to make sure that I can be a dad. And if you know what a high school principal's job is, it's very, very difficult to take care of 1,800 kids during the day and then have an opportunity to take care of your kids too. So I made the decision that I was going to go down to the district office, and I was a director of schools for 3 years. Ponderosa feeder, so I had 4 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school that I was responsible for. I was also responsible for the career and technical ed programming. During that time, you remember the budget cuts of about 2007, Jim Christensen came to me and said, hey, you had business classes in your high school, didn't you? Yeah, we did. Great, you're the CT director now, in addition to the other things that you're doing. So got a real great opportunity to work through all of those things as well. Also was in charge of concurrent enrollment program. And I know concurrent enrollment exists in Jeffco. We took a little bit different take on that. We actually had teachers in our district that were able to teach those classes in buildings. And I know that happens here in Jeffco because my daughter took some of those classes at Chatfield. But we made a concerted effort to try to address the remediation rate by having those classes in our building. 200 kids the first year, had about 7 classes, and I'm proud to say that that program has grown to about 1,600 kids. Tons of money saved for parents, but also great opportunities for kids to show in the safety net of being in a high school that they could also take care of a college class or 2. So really tried to make that a big part of what we do in our high schools. And several of our high schools use that now, and really proud of that program. The last 4 years, I have been the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education. And we have excellent programs in our high schools in Douglas County and our middle schools and our elementary schools. But I'm particularly proud of the balance in all of those schools. And I think part of the reason that they're balanced is because they have great feeder programs. And so the team that I have a high school director, a middle school director, and then we have elementary directors that work with another assistant superintendent. We make a concerted effort to make sure that we're bringing to bear on them a team approach and resources to make great schools happen and to work with building principles around great schools happening. I'm a huge believer in the power of a great principal. I mean, you give them dollars, you give them leeway, and they're going to build a great program because of the power of their personality if you have the right person. And so I think that's a critical component moving forward, is using principals and the great staffs that they have and empowering them to run with it. So had a lot of different experiences. I didn't mean to take that long, but I wanted to make sure you understood my background. I've taught everything from kindergarten to college classes. I've coached, I've taught driver's ed, which was an experience. I've done a ton of stuff, and I can tell you at the end of the day, what I believe in is having powerful relationships, having teams, high achievement with kids, transparency. I mean, all of those things that I heard and saw in the brochure about what Jeffco Schools was looking for. And so I'm really proud to be standing in front of you today. I know Jill talked a little bit about the process. I just could not believe that I was the person that was called on Saturday. You know, I mean, you put your stuff in and you think, wow, you might have a shot. And then you go to the interview and you spend the rest of that evening kicking yourself about, gee, I wish I would have said that differently. You know, staying awake almost that whole evening because I wanted this job so bad. And the next, you know, I slept about an hour. But after the initial, hey, you messed up the interview, so don't worry about it, I thought, well, what if? What if something great happened for you? So I began to try to prepare. I don't think you can ever be prepared for this job. And I'll be honest with you, my goal at the very first, I'm a huge Maslow's hierarchy of needs person. You know, we got to take care of basic needs for people, and then we got to start talking about, you know, how can we begin to develop teams and give people an opportunity to be a part of a team? And how can we get people invested in what we're doing and pull people together? And I think that those are some things that I do really well. So process-wise, what we'd like to do is give you an opportunity to ask some questions one-on-one. So I think I'm going to get taken to another room here in a minute or off to the side. I'm going to stay here till I think it's 6 o'clock when we have to cut this off. If you do not get an opportunity to talk to me tonight, there's going to be some people here taking questions. And the things that I can field, I will try to field. The things that I can't field, we'll let the district staff do that. There's going to be other opportunities, and we're doing this because we want to see how this works. We make some adjustments at a future time in terms of how we're going to do this process right here. I will guarantee you what my interest is if I'm successful, I truly want to schedule as many meetings as I can starting the first day I'm here and run with it and be a part of listening and learning and figuring out what Jeff was all about.
Great. So thank you truly for coming. You're welcome to mill around. Absolutely.
We're not going to leave you in the room, so feel free to go mingle.
Yep.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be, could we maybe take a vote to see if people would be willing to do a, just ask questions, because we can hear the responses for everybody?
I guess you know what I'd really like to do is if that's something that everybody's interested in, we can make accommodations for that at our next round at Carmody Middle School. But for me right now, I really just want to meet people as individuals and answer questions individually. I absolutely believe in the power of a big group, but I also, my first priority is making sure I make some connections with people. So if I get asked the same question 50 times, then so be it. And we'll have some people that will say, you know what, apparently this was a big question for this group. So again, I really appreciate you all being here today. If you have a question, I'm going to be standing right up here. Love to take that. If you don't have a question, thank you so much for coming.
So Dan, in the name of transparency, with this many community members coming out to talk to you in a big group circle, is there a reason why you don't want to have conversations with all these people that they can hear instead of
That's what we
individual
want.
one-on-one conversations?
I'd really prefer at this time to do one-on-one. If the feedback from the group is at the end of this that we need to make an adjustment with the next one we do, then I would surely like to do that. But for right now, I think one-on-one's the way I want to go. I appreciate your question.
How's that transparent?
Thank you very much. Hi there.
How are you?
Hey, stand in line to ask a question, man.
Yeah, you've been,
I just left the Egg Producers Association.
What's important is what do we all find important, try to find those commonalities, and we work toward goals on those commonalities. And how can we at least get some quick wins and start moving through the direction, and then you can make some rolling moves as you have some success. So that would be my initial. I don't know if that's, what I believe is that once we start getting initial inertia, more people will jump on board and moving forward.
The teachers want the kids to do great.
Absolutely.
We should all be on the same boat, so to speak, and work together.
Well, I know it's going to be a challenge, and I'm looking forward to having people help me move that way too. I know I'm not the only answer. It has to be a community effort. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Parker Wright.
Okay.
Douglas County grad,
Yeah.
73.
All right.
So,
When it was the only school.
it was the only school in the county.
Yeah.
Now I just came from Fruitdale School, and I have a proposal for that to make an arts education performance.
Okay. So I appreciate this. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
Grab a cookie so we know your next.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Hi.
Condon, I'm a parent.
Cheryl. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
How you doing? I'm Dan Reardon. I've been a football coach.
Dan,
Just
nice
announced
to
a
meet
couple
you.
months ago.
Congratulations.
Love to get you to come out and say hello to our team.
Love to.
When you get settled in.
Love to.
Good luck. Thanks.
Thanks.
I'm Marianne.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks for coming today. Great.
You've been doing that for years.
Concerned about
You've been doing that really well.
seemingly the closeness of the school board and not being open with the community or with schools. And that's a big concern.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, and you know, I think I'm very interested in that happening, but I'm one of the people that are involved in that. I think putting data in front of people and having collaborative conversations is critical when you're trying to build trust. And I'm not the only answer there. It has to be a team effort. I'm big on that locus of control, so I got to circle what can I control, what can't I control. And the things I can control, I try to take care of. The things I can't control, I try to influence. And so I appreciate your question. And we'll see. We'll see. I'm very interested in having that happen because I believe that's how we're going to have a chance to move forward.
It has to be a team,
Right.
and it has to be with the community, everybody.
Absolutely. We all just have to find the commonalities and see if we can build on those things that we all believe in. So, thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I'm Kelly Johnson.
Hi, Kelly. Nice to
And I'm
meet
a
you.
parent. I have, nice to meet you as well. I have a parent, or I have a son in middle school and a son in high school.
All right. Where at?
I have a freshman at Golden and a seventh grader at the Manning School. And they both went through the GT program at our Kiffin Elementary Neighborhood School. So I've kind of tasted a little bit of everything the district has to offer. I also co-chaired our Mill and Bond campaign in 2012.
Thank you.
And thank you for thanking me. That encourages me. What we have seen is a lot of discussion and very differing opinions from the community versus our new board majority on promises made, promises kept. What I'm hearing now from the community, the people that came out and supported us overwhelmingly for that mill and bond when they hadn't since '04, is they don't trust the district with money now. And that really concerns me, and I wanted to get your opinion on that. What are your thoughts? Because I know you saw in Douglas, your community didn't support. So what are your thoughts?
I think for a bit of background, I'm probably at a handicap here because I haven't had a chance to talk to staff about what the issues were. But I absolutely believe you have to have people like you that are going to work on these things and build community support and be, you know, if we say we're going to do X, that's what we have to do. And so what that looks like in this district, I don't have a good picture. And so I'd like to have a while to talk with staff to figure out what that answer might be.
Fair enough.
But I know that the only way that any school district can survive is by having bond and mills moving forward and being able to take care of needs, because the money from the state, while it's a big chunk, it's not going to take care of the needs as we move forward.
And they keep earmarking it, and
Right.
it's not necessarily
So,
where we
I
need
think
it.
those are all opportunities to influence, but I don't know enough about the school district at this point.
Fair enough. What I will tell you as you're going through our community is Jeffville's amazing. It's really an amazing community. It's very well knit together, even though we have great differences. And I hope that you'll be able to see that as you go through and meet people.
Well, if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be standing here today.
Well,
I
I'm
have a
sure
job
by
in
having your
another
kids in this district as well, you trust us. So.
Truly. I want to make a mark and have this be a great school district again, that we're all moving toward the same target. So,
Very much. I appreciate
All right.
that, and I'm
Thank
grateful
you.
to hear you say that.
all right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Hi there. I'm Tony Mercado, Director of Marketing.
All right.
Pro Schools Foundation.
Okay. Great.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you're doing. I know the foundation plays a huge part. Thank you.
And we would like to continue to do that. You know, as PR
Right.
for the school district. Because we have a lot of contacts.
Thank you. I worked closely with the foundation down in Douglas, and I would love to have the opportunity, once the dust kind of settles, to come out and have an opportunity to hear what you have to say and what things we should be moving towards, and have you be a part of that conversation.
We're in the process of hiring our executive director as well.
All right.
So a lot of new things,
Yeah.
a lot of change.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Hi,
Hi.
Julia.
Hi, Julia.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So my question is, what can you do to kind of ease me about the fact that every hat that I wear in this district I'm a graduate of Wheat Ridge. Both my parents were Jeffco teachers. I'm a teacher. I have 2 kids in Jeffco schools, and I'm a community member. So I represent 5 different areas in this community. And I feel like my perspective, because I'm coming at it as a teacher, is not valued. So how can you make sure that all perspectives, all people are valued and their opinions are heard in that? I have a kid, she's a GT kid. I have a kindergartner who's in a class of 36-year-olds. Like, are you kidding me? That's a lot of kids running around in there. So what can you do to kind of ease that?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is I'm not the only person that needs to be listening to people. I am obviously a key player in that, but again, I'm not the only person. But I think one of the things that I'm good at is trying to represent people. And so moving forward, I want to make sure that when my directors are out in schools, they're hearing on the ground what the issues are, and then we're trying to put resources toward those issues. I mean, if you've been a teacher in this district for a while, you know that the recession and having millions of dollars taken away in negative funding is having a huge impact on all school districts. And I think the impact in Jeffco is about $100 million ongoing money. And so whenever you have that, you have this shrinking water hole where people are looking across the water and going, well, why is that program more important than my program? So I think that's part of it, is how can I influence that discussion about getting more dollars into the school system? And then once the dollars are here, how can we use those resources in the best, efficient, exactly. And so those are big conversations to have, because everybody has their own picture of what efficiently and effectively looks like. But I think it's important to have those conversations. And at the very least, if people disagree with that, they at least know why you've had that discussion moving forward. And so I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I have the magic antidote, because I don't. But I do believe that if we focus on culture and climate and building trust, then great things will follow that. And that's going to take some time to do that. And quite honestly, if I can get into as many places as I can and hear like the big picture stuff that's happening, and then I have building principals that are coming forward and saying, here's the issue in my school, times, I think it's 118 schools, I believe, 85,000 kids. If I can have those issues coming back, then I think we can make some headway. But it's going to take all of us, and at some point we're all going to have to coalesce around, here's the big rocks that we want to accomplish moving forward.
But I think one of the big things is compromise in that issue. And just because I'm a public school parent and just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that what I want for my kids is not valuable. That what I want for my kids in kindergarten and what I want for my kids in high school is so different. There's that.
I agree.
So coming to that compromise, and I'm willing to do this, but are you willing to do this?
Well, and the compromise is also about having a conversation. You can get a lot of people to do a lot of stuff if you figure out and that they feel like they have a voice. And they were a part of the discussion, and then they understand why you're going where you're going next. And so that's what I want to try to do. And I've been able to do that in other places I've been. And so, I know people want to say, well, you're from Douglas County. Yeah, I am. But the 3 years is what those people are talking about, when in reality I've had a 24-year career in several school districts and several schools. And I have a lot of great things that I've been a part of that I think I can bring to bear on this.
So I guess I'm asking you to just have an open mind.
Absolutely have an open mind.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just want to say we old people still want us to live on neighborhood streets.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Seacrest, so I know where you are.
That's right. I rode over the hill down to Seacrest every day in the summer. I left a lot of skin on Pierce Street from my bike.
Cold pool.
That's right. But we loved it.
Well, good luck. We need to have everybody.
I appreciate you being here. Hi.
Dan McMinimee. My name is Janet Riley. I'm a proud Jeffco employee. I've worked at Kiffin Elementary School for 9 years as a special ed teacher.
Great.
My question for you is, as a former teacher, what is your opinion of unions and what do you think their purpose is?
Well, I think obviously there's that sense of belonging, part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it's a great community for people to have an opportunity to voice their concerns and have a group that can come forward and say, here's the big picture of what we're interested in. So I think that's valuable in a school with 14,000 staff members to have that opportunity.
So you're not against unions?
Absolutely not. I was part of a union when I was a teacher.
That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. And do you plan to not have us working on a contract like Doug Hope?
So I can't comment specifically on here because I don't know the issues, but what I would say is I believe in locus of control. What are the things I can control? And so the things that are within that circle, I will do my best to try to influence and make sure that those things happen. The things that I can't that are outside of that, then I'm going to have to do a better job of trying to influence and pull them into my circle. So I want to emphasize this is Jeffco, not Jeffco. I'm interested in moving forward in Jeffco. And so Jeffco's Jeffco. We're going to make our own decisions moving forward and work on that.
Jeffco is not failing. We are 80% reading.
My kids would not have been here if I felt like that.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear that. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you as well.
I'm Dr. Cecilia Lang. I am not a
Very nice to
teacher.
meet
I am
you.
a member of the community.
Thanks for being
I do not wish to be taped, please. And I just want to say that the whole community is watching, and we do support our teachers.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all right.
Appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Victoria Hall, and I work in educational research and design in the district, and I'm also a parent of a about-to-be kindergartner. I can't believe it.
Wow, it's going to go like that. So
I know,
hold
that's
on.
what everyone tells me. I know that one of the items that in the community survey that went out about the new superintendent, one of the items that was important to the community was somebody who worked in, who had familiarity with diversity. And the department I work in is ESL dual languages, so obviously that's a little thing of mine, right? And I just wanted to know what experience you have working with culturally and linguistically diverse families, and how you're going to continue to support us, because we had a huge proponent in Dr. Stevenson. We'd love to enjoy that same support from our next superintendent.
So, yeah, all I can talk about is my past experience. When I was in Oregon, 2 of the elementary schools I worked in were 95% highly impacted dollar schools. That's Oregon vernacular for low SES, basically. So, tons of diversity in those buildings. I had kindergartners and first graders that had older brothers that were in gangs, had students that came from horrific home lives. And I think what you try to do is you try to put the resources in those schools and find teachers that want to be in those schools to influence those kids. And so when I moved to high school at South Salem High School, I had a very strong ELL population in that school. And so in my role as athletic director, one of the goals was to get those kids engaged in school, and what better way than through athletics. And so I went out of my way to try to work with those families and those students around, how can we get you to participate in this? But also having coaches understand culturally what those families were about. And it wasn't about you have to be at practice every single day and you have to do it like this. And so trying to bridge that gap was a huge part of what I tried to do. My recent experience, obviously in Douglas County, there's not a large diversity of students, but there is a number of SPED students that are highly impacted in buildings that we, again, have to put the resources where the kids need them and where you can influence what's going on for them.
Thank you. We look forward to continued support from you.
I'm sweating here.
Hi, my name is Kelly Bish. I'm a first grade teacher. Excuse me.
Right.
You mentioned improving transparency when you were speaking earlier, and I'm curious about how you intend to do that between teachers, the board, and the community, because right now it's not.
I think it takes all of us. Again, focusing on what we all think is important and then how are we going to get there. I think all of us have to work together to try to increase that transparency. So from my viewpoint, I think the only thing I can do is be who I am and try to whatever I say I'm going to do, I try to do that. That would be number one. And then number two, what are the systems that can be put into place to increase that? And so I know there are some systems like the financial situation right now where I can go in and say, I want to see account X and being able to look at that. But I think beyond that, how do you talk about how the discussions and the decisions are made? So instead of making decisions over here, is there a way that you can bring those discussions out into the open and have people talk about those things, and then everyone understands moving forward why you made a decision the way you did? And so that's just right off the top of my head. I don't know Jeffco. I have not been here, so I think there's other people that have great ideas about that too. And I think that's important, to be a part of that conversation and bring everybody into that. How can we improve that? So maybe one of the first things is around trust. And I think that's the most important thing we have to build as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Laurie Joseph. I'm an ESL resource teacher, and I have a first grader in Jeffco schools and then a younger one that's going to be coming up too. I work with a lot of teachers, K-12, and I'm just really concerned that we're going to lose a lot of teachers, and already we've seen that. So my question for you is, what would you do to prevent that, and try and retain some of the excellent teachers that we have, and some of the teachers, that your children have had?
Yeah, so I think part of the answer is around there's been a lot of turmoil to this point, and so I think if people feel like, all right, there's some hope and we're going to move forward and try to build a future together, then maybe there'll be some people that don't decide to do that. That would be one. I think talking about the way we reward and retain and attract people is another big conversation we have to have. People are all in the same boat across the metro area about how do we reward our best teachers, how do we keep people in our system, how do we invest in those people when they're in the system. So what are the other supports that you have to have in place? What makes teachers stay where they want to stay? And I think those are big conversations to have. And I don't know the current state of Jeffco. Obviously, I'd have to talk to staff about that. But I do believe it's important to have teachers feel like they can express their opinions and have an opportunity to be a part of building a future moving forward. So,
thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Very nice to meet you too.
Took your jacket?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Yeah.
You're just getting started.
Yes. How are you, sir?
Malanyaki, Arvada. In Arvada West area. I've got a grandson that he's in Sierra, so he's heading your way. First of all, illegitimate non-carpenter is a little saying that I learned a long time ago, and I like to pass it on, and I'm sure you're aware of what it translates to. I'm one of the people that helped get the majority elected. I'm just one of a small cog in the all the people that tried to help. My focus is students. The students are my main emphasis. Everything else is secondary. And I want to encourage you to continue in that vein. I think you've got that already. I support the majority. I think they're doing a great job. I'm glad to see you. Yeah, all I'm going to say is great, go for it. If we can help in any way, great. I'm happy. Like I said, my main focus is the kids, and everything else comes secondary.
Appreciate that.
Have a nice time.
All righty.
Excuse me, folks.
Do you have a question? No, okay, great.
Hi, I'm Martha Patton.
Hi,
I
Martha.
teach at Warren Tech, and I know
All right.
you were involved
Good
in
for you.
CTE
Yeah.
in Douglas County. Can you tell me how you're going to help us expand and grow our programs in all CTE programs, not just Warren Tech?
Right. So I can tell you what we did in Douglas is we tried to figure out what kids wanted to be involved in. And so from that, we made decisions about where to put resources. So when I was in charge of CTE, we were going down to ACC and the ACTS program. And I know Jeffco was a part of that. It was Littleton, Cherry Creek, and those schools. And we made a decision that the $200,000 and some odd we were putting into that and serving 35 or 40 kids wasn't getting it done for Douglas County, especially with the growth that we had. So we worked with the other surrounding schools and surrounding districts and talked about what could a new vision be for that. And we took those dollars back and took ACC out of the middle, and we used those dollars to direct those toward programs in our schools based on what we knew kids wanted to take. So for instance, let's talk about culinary arts. We always had 35 or 40 students who wanted to be involved in culinary arts. The only program was at Englewood High School. And that's a long ways from Ponderosa High School to Englewood High School. So it automatically takes a group of kids from geography, it takes them out of the mix there. So our decision was to build a culinary arts program at Thunder Ridge High School and have it be a magnet for our districts and be able to attract kids. Now granted, it's still a ways from Ponderosa to Thunder Ridge, but it's not Englewood. We did the same thing with the fire science program at Rock Canyon High School, same thing with Auto Tech at Ponderosa. So we tried to get numbers and what kids' interests are, and then we built those programs, and we directed resources in a really difficult time toward those programs for students. So I think that's part of the answer. I guess at the very root of it all is we have to honor that all kids learn differently and have different aspirations. So our job is to find opportunities for kids within what we offer and create opportunities for kids if we don't have something, if there's a group of kids that want that. And so I think we have to be creative in doing that because obviously we don't have money to be able to do everything we want to do. So what's going to make the most impact on students is how I'd approach it. Now, I know that there's been a long tradition of things at Warren Tech, and I know that kids have benefited from that program. So what are the great things we have going on right now, and what can we grow from there? Including what can go on in individual high schools, because there's a critical mass of students that want that in every single high school. So multimedia classes come to my mind. I know that there's a lot of students that they really want to be a part of that. So, as you're growing those programs, is it one or two high schools in a region that should have that? As you're growing it until you get to, all right, there's more kids that want to take this, now it needs to be in every high school. And so I think it's really minding what students want to be involved in.
How
how do you see evaluating teachers in CTE classrooms, which are very different from traditional classrooms? How do you see that evaluation being differentiated?
Well, obviously with Senate Bill 191, they're working toward that with having differentiated evaluations. They're not quite there yet. That's one of the reasons why we went to a different evaluation system, was because we could have 24 differentiated evaluation tools for just that purpose. A counselor has one, a PE teacher has one, a business teacher has one, for those ones that are markedly different. So I don't know the current state in Jeffco. I'd have to refer that to staff, but I do know that people need to be measured against what they're doing instead of a single boilerplate template. And so I think it's similar to what you do in classrooms for students. You have high expectations, but then you personalize those to students.
I'd like to invite you to Warren Tech.
Thank you very much.
See what we do.
Right. Hi there.
Hi, my name is Aspen Lewis, and I am a student attending Grade 5 to 8, and I was wondering what your goals are for Jeffco.
Well, I think the big story there is that they can be my goals, but they really have to be our goals. And so I think working with the Board of Education and working with people in the community during these next 180 days is going to be critical in talking about, okay, if we all want this, how do we get there? And so I could walk in here and say, these are the 3 things we're going to do, but I don't think that would be as powerful as having a conversation and then moving forward with what we all want to do. And I think students are a big part of that. Thanks for the question.
I'm Amy Asiala. This is my 20th year in the district. I taught at Columbine. I taught some summer school at Chatfield, Dakota Ridge. That's my neighborhood, but I work here. And I just feel like there's a big problem with the culture of Jeffco. You're saying you're not really familiar with what's going on in Jeffco. The culture is pretty rotten. This is my 20th year and I've never seen it so bad. And I just wonder if you have something you can tell us, maybe what you're going to put forward as far as trying to make that mandate. Because I'm afraid other fixes aren't going to happen until the culture gets patched up.
So I think the first thing is we're all responsible for culture, right? And so are there opportunities for us to converse about what's current state, what's the brutal facts, and how can we move forward from where we are? Are there some things we can coalesce around where we can have some quick wins, where we decide here's a goal we all want, let's go make that happen, and then you build on that success as you're moving forward. So yeah, there's some purposeful things that you can do as a leader to do that, but I also know that takes everyone's responsible for culture. And so we have to start identifying what those common themes are that we have and moving forward. So that's where I would start. I do know a little bit about the culture of Jeffco because I'm a parent, but obviously it's not the level that you have. And so for me to say these are the things I think we need to work on, that's probably a moot point at this point. But I think after I have an opportunity to talk to people and hear what they have to say, and we can identify some areas where we could possibly improve, we may not improve everything overnight, but we may find some pieces that, hey, if we just start moving forward, we'll get some momentum.
I know just from standing in the back, people were hoping to have this kind of more of a bigger, more open, because we feel like it's not very transparent when we're one-on-one rather than having the question.
I think we'll go to the...
So it sounded like you're going to do that next time, and I think that would be a really good idea.
I don't know if it'll be the next time, but maybe the time after that.
So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Matt Landon, 20-year teacher in the district. I just had a question about reform. I mean, we have a board majority that says this district needs reform. We had 8 high schools in the USA top 100. Douglas County had 0. How do we get faced with we need reform when we have that kind of performance and you're coming from a district that doesn't?
Well, I guess I'd talk about Douglas County a bit. Understanding how they measured that would be another thing to talk about. I'm not taking away from the great stuff that's happening in Jeffco because I know you've had a number of buildings on different lists, and the same thing happens in Douglas County. There's a number of schools on different lists. So you gave an example where we didn't have any, but we have schools on other lists. So I understand what you're saying, though, is, I mean, to me it was about the question about why pushing reform when we have successful schools right now.
Exactly.
And so I guess for me is, yeah, we have successful schools right now. I don't know enough about everything that's going on here to be able to answer that question in depth. I'd like to have an opportunity to talk to the achievement directors, but I do believe this. I think learners are changing, and I think needs of students in their future are changing as well. So I would like to build on the great practices that already exist, and we have excellent teachers. I know that because my kids had some. But I think it's about making that equity across all schools. And so you may have a pocket of great teachers, which there is. How can we take those practices and transform those across the whole system so every student has an opportunity for that?
And the current school board, the current majority is ignoring a huge segment of the population. They're saying they don't want to fund all-day kindergarten. We know that's where it starts. How are you going to get them convinced that this is a worthwhile achievement, that this is going to be that parity, this is going to be that equity that we do need across the district? Because that is the culture issue. We did not have a problem in this district. Our current board majority brought the problem to us. We've been a successful district for many years, and this board majority is taking a very different tack in what is success, and they're running that culture down our throats.
So I think for me right now, again, I don't have enough background to be able to articulate what that would be moving forward, but I do know this, that anytime you want to move something forward, you better create the case for change. So why are we going to do this? And I think that's an important facet, talking globally. Why do we need to do this? What's important about this? Why is this going to make a difference for kids? And so that, I think that's the way that I'd approach it. The specifics, those are not with me at this point in time.
Right.
So I certainly appreciate your question.
Right, because the current board majority is manufacturing a problem. Simple enough. And you have a big task in front of you to try to quell that in there. So good luck with it.
Actually, I think we all do, and I look forward to working with you.
I've been on board for 20 years. This is the first time I felt this divisiveness in this district. It's coming from the board majority right now.
Well, I look forward to working with you on turning that around.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm Dolores, and I apologize if this has been asked. As a taxpayer, in the name of transparency and in the name of truth, I'm very concerned about the redacted invoices from the board's attorney. What do you plan to do about that?
Well, I appreciate your question, but I don't have enough background information to answer that question at this time. So what I'd like to do is, well, a version of it's been on the news, I'm sure. And so I think that what we'd like to do is if there's questions like that I can't answer right now, I think those are appropriate for staff to have an opportunity to field those. And so if that's okay, I'd like to have a kitchen pass at this point on that question. Hopefully after 90 to 100 days, I'd have an opportunity to go, okay, here's what I believe. And so...
And can I ask one more question about charter equalization? So I've tried to do some research, and that's kind of a tricky subject, but I'm doing some research on it. But if they want equalization in terms of funding, then should they not have equalization in terms of class size and those types of things? And the children they accept, and I work with children with special needs, and I know, I am well aware of children who are turned away from school. So should they not have equalization in terms of at-risk children, diverse children, and classroom size, if they want equalization in terms of funding?
Again, I think the current state in Jeffco is something that I don't know the answer to that. What I could say from a 10,000 foot view is that there are rules and regulations from a state perspective about what you can and can't do. The charter is actually a contract with the school district, and so we have charters in my other school district, and we have successful relationships with them because we understand what the can and can'ts are. And I totally understand your question, but I think it's about choice and it's about students having an opportunity to have options at those places. Understand what you're saying about some kids don't have those options.
Right.
And so
if they follow a different set of rules, then I think it just needs to be balanced with equal funding. If you get the opportunity to follow a different set of rules, then perhaps if you're not equal in one sense, I'm not sure about the push to be equal in
Well, I guess I'd like to have another opportunity to understand exactly what's happening in Jeffco.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your question.
Maybe fill your water bottle on
Yeah,
a note of
thanks. Hi there.
I'm Elizabeth Reed. I'm from Stanley Lake High School, and I wore the shirt so that you would remember. We don't necessarily have a question, but I just want to let you know that I'm kind of representing everyone at Stanley, well, not everyone. I'm representing a portion of the staff at Stanley Lake today to let you know that our biggest concern with you being from Douglas County is the market-based pay system for teachers that was instituted in Douglas County. And that isn't necessarily a question for you. You don't have enough information about Jeffco. You haven't been officially hired yet, but I want to let you know that at my school, we're very concerned about that, and we feel like saying one grade level teacher is more important than another grade level, or one discipline in secondary is more important than another discipline in secondary. My staff has some, not all, I can't speak for everyone, but a large portion of people in my school feel that is not the way to go in Jeffco. So.
And I understand that, and I said this before, Jeffco's Jeffco. Dougco is Dougco, and my responsibility is working with the community here to try to put forth those things that we want to do collectively as a community moving forward. Some of those things things some people will disagree with. Some of those things people would agree with. I don't know the threshold of that right now because I don't have that background information, but I would say this. I'm committed to Jeffco being Jeffco. And I know that's the concern is, wow, this guy's coming from Dougco and we're going to look exactly like him. And my interest is making sure that what we're doing moving forward is for Jeffco the best move for taking care of 85,000 kids and 14,000 staff.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Thanks. Hi there.
I'm Rob Phillips.
Hi, Rob.
I teach at Mitchell Elementary School. I grew up here in Jeffco. I actually went to Wheat Ridge High School. My kids go to Jeffco, and I've taught here for about 24 years.
Great.
I am very glad to meet you, and I am glad to hear that you want Jeffco to be Jeffco and Dougco to be Dougco. One of the concerns that I have is the questionable constitutionality of using a ghost school to funnel taxpayer money to private schools, which is being litigated right now through Douglas County Schools. And I wonder if you'd be willing to say that you would not allow that or condone that to happen here in Jeffco.
Well, I think that's a big discussion because I didn't see it as being a ghost school. So I understand it's in litigation right now, but the way that was formatted was absolutely not to do that. So I appreciate your question, but I think the answer is there's a lot of stuff that has to happen before it even got to that place. So again, the discussion about what do we want to do as a community moving forward. So I appreciate your question. That was what was going to work for Douglas County, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to work here.
Okay, if I could just follow on then, one of the things that I find concerning is that before it was held in limbo because of the constitutionality issues, there was money that would be going to private religious schools, which I feel in a way is not constitutional and it's a violation of the taxpayer trust.
So again, that's being litigated right now, and I am big on this locus of control. Put the things you can control inside of a circle, and you work on those. Put those things you can't control outside of the circle and try to influence them. And so my role in my past experience was inside of the circle, and it didn't include that. So I understand what you're saying, but that's a decision that is made by a board of education, and I firmly believe that entering into contracts and making decisions like that, we can influence those things, and we can say, here's what it might look like, and here's where the pressure points are going to be. But in the end, that's a decision that they make.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
I think as
Very
a
nice
broad
to meet you.
community, we don't want to see vouchers and money go into private schools.
I really appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Dan.
Thanks.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
I'm Blanche Kapushin. I'm the director of Gifted in Town.
Nice to meet you, Blanche.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Jeffco is a large and vast and very diverse school district. One of our favorite mottos, or one of the things that we say all the time, is all means all.
Right.
What does all means all mean to you?
Every single student, every single day, I guess, is the short answer for that. I mean, are we putting our dollars toward making sure students have opportunities and choices and chances to be the best that they can be? And so, again, in a time of lack of funding like we have, there are some very difficult choices to make, but I still think you have to look at it through that lens of how can we provide opportunities for all kids. That's what it means to me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Johan Cohn. How do you do?
Pretty good. How are you?
I've been retired for about 15 years from this.
Good for you. That's great.
It's been okay. There's an article in the New York. I'm trying to couple two questions together. But there's an article in the New Yorker magazine this week about Newark schools, which are, of course, heavily impacted, much more so in our district, and it's also a larger district. And as you know, a sitting high school principal is now the mayor of Newark. As of about 2 or 3 days.
I really haven't been following that. So
okay.
Sorry. I will go home and follow that now.
But he is a high school principal that also has had some pushback against charter schools and against the state-run school district. I'll just mention that in passing. But you were a high school principal. How do you view the real problem in motivation in secondary? And please, no magical answers. I know you can't answer it quickly, but do you have a view that's out there and might work?
And so I can't speak specifically about Jeffco because again I don't know the specifics here, but I can say globally what you should be trying to do at high school is engage students in coursework and opportunities that they want to be engaged in. So how can you personalize programming for students? And I'm not saying one plan for each of 1,800 kids. But what I am saying is things like demand scheduling, where at the beginning of building a master schedule, you ask kids, here's all the courses we could offer, what do you want to take? And then they're engaged in picking the courses that they want to take, and they're a part of that moving forward. So you build a master schedule based on what students want to take, and also based on what graduation requirements and all those things, what that's all about. I think it's also about providing programming for students that they're going to be engaged in. So yes, I have to take reading, writing, math, science, those courses, but are there other courses that I may want to take that we can provide for students? And so having a diverse array of courses at a building, while it's a challenge in these times of not having as much dollars as we want to, I think that there's still opportunities to do that. So I don't have the magic answer. I think that's also the magic of being a building principal, is I have to personalize that to my community and to my school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. If you don't get a question answered tonight, you can just go onto the district's website and look for communication services and send your question there, and we'll see that it gets answered.
There's a time frame from 4 to 6?
4 to 6. I think I was just told we need to wrap it up.
I have a question.
Great.
I'm a Jeffco parent.
All right.
I have 2 students in the district.
Awesome.
And I'd like just your perception and your view on graduation requirements. And were they lowered in Douglas County?
They were.
Okay, and why was that?
From 25.5 to 24. I think Douglas County gets about $1,000 less than surrounding school district. It's the lowest funded school district in the Denver metro area, from what I remember. The decision was about being able to provide flexibility for students with the dollars that we had. And so the decision was around, can we drive down class size? And so yes, they were lowered from 25.5 to 24, but I believe the majority of the school districts are still lower than that in the metro area. I think Jeffco's higher than that, if I remember from my daughter.
It is.
It's at 25. So that was a decision collectively made by that community, and I think if that is something that people want to talk about here, we can certainly talk about that, but I don't get the sense that that's something that people want to talk about.
Right, and I would never support that, because I think we always have to higher standards and not lower, no matter what those other factors are.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
Hey Dan, real quick question. I wanted to ask you about what your take is on the role of diversity in our students, and kind of how that plays into how they develop and grow, and because there is, if you didn't know this, a lot of quotes from current board members that are talking about how diversity is not important to them in various ways. So I wanted to hear what your take is on the role of diversity in students' lives.
So I think the end result is you got to serve all kids. It doesn't matter. Every single student deserves an opportunity to be the best that they can be. So how do you put resources into those schools where there's a higher impact and make sure that those students have opportunities, as well as take care of the students in other schools that may not be as impacted? Because you have to spread the dollars around to all students, and all students deserve an opportunity. So that's the short answer. The long answer is I have had experience doing that. When I was in Oregon, obviously being an elementary teacher, I was in 2 of the highest impacted schools in Salem-Keizer School District. Over 95% of the students in those buildings came from very challenging home lives, with a lot of diversity involved in that. And I think that the important thing is making sure that you have a great teacher in the classroom that's going to meet those kids' needs individually, and then you try to put resources in there to help support that. So in terms of talking about Jeffco, that would be something that I probably need to know more about before I can comment specifically here.
So I have a follow-up to that. How does full-day kindergarten for impoverished students fit into that? When you talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and obviously perhaps in the example of full-day kindergarten, it's literally they get fed there, if they're free and reduced lunch kids. We currently have a system that isn't equitable, and so there are free and reduced lunch kids in schools that don't have an opportunity for full-day kindergarten. What's your philosophy about full-day kindergarten?
Well, I think you need to take a look at what the need is, and then you need to make sure that you meet that need. And so that may be individual schools that are involved in that, or that may be some other type of program that would meet individual needs of students within all schools. And so I know that was a big conversation down at the legislature this year. It was talking about full-day kindergarten across the board. I think the discussion is what does Jeffco want to do with that moving forward? And so I really can't comment on the specifics of this school district, but I do know that, if you have the data to support that that's important, and you know that that's the best pathway to provide for students, how can you make that happen in an equitable fashion so that students that truly need it across the district have access to it?
Right, and it's currently really inequitable, and in fact, charter schools who are taking loans are using that money to offer free kindergarten and compete with our neighborhood schools. So that's happening in the south end of the district. Collegiate Academy has it on their homepage that they're competing with our neighborhood schools that have free and reduced lunch populations. So it's a problem.
Okay.
And the community has spoken pretty loudly on that if you look at the budget survey.
Right. Well, I appreciate your question. Thank you.
And Dan, knowing that your tenure is finishing at Dougco and you're in a position where you're going to be starting this new tenure, are there things that you could say that you've learned from in terms of the mistakes that you've made that you've wanted to improve upon, and what would some of those things be?
That's a great question. So I think, again, the important thing is working with people to move a system forward is something that has to be key in your thinking as you're taking care of business in a school district. So, having an opportunity to come out into the Jeffco schools and have honest conversations with people and hear what the pressure points are in smaller groups so that you understand and everybody gets an opportunity to have their voice in the room, I think those are important things to do.
Do they have a voice in that, or is it going to be brought through like the board?
Well, all I can speak is what my goal is to do is to have an opportunity for people to have a voice. I'm sorry?
Aren't you influenced by the board?
Well, obviously, they're the person that hires me, but I think that there is an opportunity there. If we want to move forward, we have to find the common pieces to move forward.
You can't batter the people who are there already. You have to start listening to them, and that's not happening.
I appreciate that comment.
And as a taxpayer, I'm really irate at what's going on.
Okay.
And the foolishness that's going on, and just plain stupidity that's going on.
All right. Thank you.
Have you ever attended a board meeting? Sorry. Have you ever attended one of Jeffco's board meetings?
No, I have not.
It's an experience.
I think you're going into a hornet's nest, and I really appreciate you're doing that, and good luck to you. But I guess I would ask, how do you feel about the teacher bashing antics of the Douglas County School Board? I would hope you would renounce them, or do you support them, or will you not answer, or how do you feel about the Douglas County School Board?
I will own my own behavior, and I know that in my tenure in Douglas County Schools, I've worked very closely with teachers as a building principal, as a director of schools, as current assistant superintendent. So that's what I would say, and I know that a great teacher in the classroom is critical to the success of students and is the backbone of a great school district. So it's important that we have those opportunities to talk, and it's important that we that goes both ways. So, talking about me, talking about you, we're focused on what's best for kids, and we're going to move forward with that, and we try to put those things behind us and move forward.
I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
It's going to be tough.
All right.
Would anybody like to sit down? Would you like to sit down? No one's moving.
Where would you like us to go sit?
Well, if you guys want to move to tables over here, it'd be a little less hot.
I have a question for you.
Great.
I'm a parent at Pennington Elementary. It's an extra learning time school. What is your position on doing extra learning time and keeping these programs going? We have an 86% Title I school, free and reduced lunch. We have turned our numbers around. We have shown that you can turn numbers around, but it takes more resources and it takes money. Are you going to give that to us, or are you going to open up a charter school instead?
Well, again, I'm not familiar with what's happening in Jeffco, so I can't comment on that. I need some more background from staff. But what I do believe in happening is having building principals make decisions about that and trying to get the resources.
It takes money and resources. Where's the money going to be? We need money. We have kids who are in desperate situations. We've turned around their numbers. We're doing the extra learning time. We got a lot of parents involved, a lot of parent involvement, but we need the extra teachers. We need the extra paras. We need, to have doctors come in and help our students. We're a Title I school right here in Wheat Ridge. We need that help, and I'm scared to death that you're talking private schools and charter schools, and there ain't going to be money to continue on a Title I, extra learning program like we're doing in Pennington.
So, like I said, Jeffco is Jeffco, and the decisions made here are going to be tailored to the community here. So the things that you just mentioned...
I just told you what the community is here. What's your position on it?
Well, obviously, if there's something that's working and we want to make sure students are going to be successful, we need to find ways to get resources to that. But we have to understand that there's also a big need in the whole district for a variety of different things.
Our school's packed to capacity. Are you just going to open up a charter school that's at 40% capacity?
Well, that wouldn't be my...
In a rich district?
That would not be my decision solely. So I understand your question, and I guess the short answer is trying to find resources is a challenge. And I think that's part of the decision-making process is where do we have dollars that we can direct
Yeah, where are you going to direct it? I think that's what we're all talking about here, and you're keep avoiding the question. What are you guys intending on doing here?
Decision maker in there. So I have to work with the board around making those decisions.
Yeah, I think we all consider you with the board.
My job is to make sure that the information around programs that seek funding, all that data is there, and there's a decision made on what's going to be the best moving forward. And so I'm a part of that. Obviously, you're part of influencing
I hope you take a really good look at Pennington and what we're doing, and you keep it going.
Thank you.
These kids need the extra learning time to get ahead. I see kids in schools at 40% capacity when we were put on the chopping block to be, axed, like 2 other schools in Wheat Ridge were. All right, you're closing our schools here in Wheat Ridge. We're one of the only ones left. We have to do an extra learning time, and we're getting our kids ahead, and we're making a difference. And you can't commit to me if you're going to make a difference and keep that going.
I appreciate your perspective, but at this point in time, I don't know enough about it to comment.
Well, I hope you figure out what you can do. Because I don't like your comments so far, and I've heard what you've told these other people, and you're scaring the hell out of me, sir.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Amy, do you have a question? My first question is, if we all went and sat down at tables, would you be willing to just kind of take questions from the crowd so everybody can hear?
I'm fine with this.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I'm fine with right here. This is great.
You'd rather have it like this?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is great.
All right. There's been a lot of discussion about
For the media too, and for the community.
Can we talk to the whole group?
Can we get you over here so they can sit down?
Well, how much more time do we have?
An hour? You have an hour.
An hour.
I was asking her the question. I appreciate that.
We'll let you go until 6. We move things around.
But we're respectful of teachers.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
I said, are we respectful of teachers?
I believe I am.
Let's go sit down. Stand in the corner, bud.
We also have them. We have cards.
I don't have any, but we'll get them.
The other option is yeah.
I was thinking, sit at tables, you could go to each table, or you can go to
And I'm in it.
What do you want to do at the tables? No, I do like.
I guess we're sitting at tables, so we'll go from there.
Since everybody can sit down, why don't you sit at tables? You can come to your table and spend a little bit of time so you can hear better and it's not so crowded. If you want to group around the table, that would be great. So the time spread,
We're outside the circle. My job in that role was to take about 25 items as part of a negotiating team and negotiate with the other side and try to reach some consensus on some of those items. I'm thinking about 20 to 22 of those items we reached some form of agreement on that we could take forward. There were some items that were stated as non-negotiable. And so at that point, we spent over 100 hours in open negotiations with the union. And all of those minutes are on our website, or they used to be on our website, if you want to listen to 100 hours of open negotiations. In the end, my role is to try to get to the end and take that to the Board of Education. And then the Board of Education made the decision. And so my job was to do this. The Board of Education makes a decision on the contract, and that's their decision, and I respect that.
And since we're going through negotiations now, can you say which areas were the ones that they couldn't find an area of agreement on, whether many or just a few?
The ones that I remember, because it was 2 years ago, was one was around salary and where those dollars were going to come from. Were they going to be one-time dollars, or were they going to be ongoing dollars? And at that point in time, there were some pretty serious financial issues in Douglas County, as well as everywhere. Obviously, those things have gotten better with the state of Colorado funding now about $300 more per student in our district. I don't know about here, but I know there's more money coming back into the system. That was one. There was a discussion about the whole notion of being the bargaining unit as opposed to a bargaining unit, and the discussion was that the district wanted to be a bargaining unit and open the door for other opportunities there, and so that was a piece that the union didn't want any part of. And I respect their position. We took that back to the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed made a decision. Those are the two big ones I remember. So I think there were some other ones, but that was 2 years ago. So. Those are big. Correct.
You hit somebody.
What are your feelings about charter schools? I know that's a big conversation right now, and a big plan for the future, perhaps? Can you address this on
Sure,
charters?
and I can just tell you from my experience in my current district, those were used as a way to mitigate growth and the need for additional buildings in that district. We were growing by about 3,600 students per year, and so there's no way that the school district could afford to build all of those schools, nor do we have the manpower to do all that. So the notion was, can we use these schools as an opportunity to house students and keep those students in Douglas County? I think that discussion has to be decided upon in a district. And so there's other factors that go into that. If you're going to talk about opening charter schools in the district, you better have the discussion about what the impacts are to other schools, where that charter school is going to open. And so I think in the end there's a decision that has to be made, but you better be crystal clear about here's the impact to surrounding schools and what's the impact in terms of choice for students. And so the reality is in Colorado that school or the charters try to go through districts first, but in the end if they don't get a charter, my understanding is that they can go to the state and get their own charter. And so I guess what I would rather do is have an opportunity to have a win-win if it's going to be a win-win, and have those discussions out in the open so people understand if we put a school here, what does that mean for these other schools? And have that discussion about what does that mean for kids? Is that another opportunity for kids that can't currently be taken in our current schools, or what is that?
And as a parent in Jeffco, because I live down, my daughter goes to Dakota Ridge, and so I have kids down south also. What do you feel about that as a parent, like in that south area even?
Yeah. Well,
about choices for kids, because you've had kids at two schools.
Correct, and obviously I believe in the power of choice for students, but every one of those choices has to be a high level. When my students came to Jeffco from Dougco, they had an opportunity to choose the school that they were in and be involved in the programs they wanted to be in, and I think that was powerful for them to have that opportunity. I think it invests them, and it certainly invested us as parents. And yes, it was challenging to have kids in two different schools, but I think that was great for them to be able to establish their own identity. That was good for our kids. So I think that's an important piece of choice. I also believe that you have to have, that choice has to be real, and it has to be high quality, wherever that choice is.
What do you see as your role to unify this school district?
Well, I think asking questions is a big part of that.
Are you listening?
Absolutely.
That's not happening so far.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I think I feel that a ton of questions
I think there's a lot
there.
of people that feel that way. I'm not alone.
Well, I apologize.
And this district is very, very divided and screwed up. And as a superintendent, I would assume that would be your role to unify this district. And I just want to know, what are your goals and how are you going to do that?
Well, I think most importantly, it has to be our goals. And so again, I think the most important thing is being out and listening to people and hearing what they have to say, and then finding the commonalities and finding some ways to move forward. And so I understand.
We'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
I realize that, the board makes policy and you would implement the policy. If the board would make the policy that they wish to have vouchers, would you wholeheartedly support that? Because apparently you did wholeheartedly support it in Dougco.
So again, I answered the question before about a locus of control. What am I responsible for, and what's my role once a decision is made? And I think in the role of being a superintendent, your job is to make sure that the data is put forward, that it offers multiple perspectives from multiple people, and then when the decision is made, your job is to try to put that into place. And so that's what I see my role would be, is making sure that the data is there to understand what the impacts of those decisions would be. And then in the end, if the decision is to do X, that we try to implement that within the best possible way that we could. So it's not if I support or don't support or that. It's we have
You will be a good follower
no,
of the policy.
I think that that's my responsibility once that decision is made. Now, I think the other part of that is that I'm a part of influencing that decision before it's made and doing all that I can do to try to bring forward what would be the possible implications for that.
Do you have some kind of feeling for what you would do for a voucher push then?
You know,
Without the data, you don't have.
I
yes
really don't
or
have.
no?
I really don't have a good feel for that. I don't even know if that's a conversation in this community right now.
Well, we've been told it isn't, but we've been told that, there's going to be a national surge too, so, thank you.
This table has about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to move him over here.
A community survey went out, and there were 5 top priorities. Could you reiterate those top priorities?
I could not do that for you.
You can't?
No.
I don't believe
13,000 citizens answered.
and you said you were listening to the community, and a community survey did go out. I was just wanting you to reiterate the top 5 priorities, of which I don't believe charter schools was in even the top 5. And you were just saying that charter schools were at #1 priority.
I did not say that. I did not say that charter schools were the #1 priority. I said I didn't know the conversation in Jeffco.
But you're going to be our new superintendent, so I think you should be aware of what the community voted on.
I appreciate that perspective.
And so you can't reiterate the top 5 priorities of our community?
At this point in time, I cannot say that.
But you are our sole finalist and can't reiterate those 5?
Will you give
Did they ask you that
results
in the interview? Did they ask you what your priorities are in the interview?
Well, the question I was asked is, what do you think your strengths are? So I talked
Okay, tell
about
us.
teamwork. I talked about listening to people. I talked about academic achievement. I mean, I think those are 3 things that I bring to the table. Obviously, making sure that you understand what people's concerns are, working with data. I think those were the things that I remember bringing forward in that interview.
I'm sorry to interject. I love the fact that you said listening to people. My name's Beth, and we're new to Jeffco. I've only been here about 8 months. And to address your question about the top priorities, what I find shocking is the fact that 13,000 people answered that survey. I went to a meeting at Evergreen High School to discuss that, and then to find out what the fiscal priorities were going to be for next year, for me was a complete slap in the face. And I guess it's shocking that I moved here for this school district, and to go through all the steps and to have this idea of collaboration when really it seems like there's a set agenda, to me doesn't feel right viscerally or intellectually or anything. So I like the fact that you said listening to people, and I would hope that that would follow through during your tenure as superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, I'm going to have you move over here to this table because they've been waiting to ask questions, or you can sit there and they can shout out their questions, whichever you prefer.
I will stay here, unless you would like me to move over there.
Okay. Ken Witt was quoted as saying that Daniel is someone who has a strong record of academic achievement, and I'm just wondering if you can speak to that, because I think all of us want to know what your qualifications are, and having not been a superintendent of a district this size, I'm really concerned as to whether you truly do have the qualifications to run a district of this size. So one is, I would like you to speak to Ken Witt's quote about your academic achievement record, and also just speak more to your qualifications. I understand that you were a coach and a kindergarten teacher, but running being a superintendent with 86,000 students and this many employees is a whole different ball of wax.
Sure. So as a building principal in Oregon at Sprague High School, it's recognized as one of the top schools in the state of Oregon. I work collaboratively with teachers in that building to drive academic achievement and be a part of those discussions as both an assistant principal and the principal there. So recognizing what good instruction looks like in the classroom and working to give resources to teachers and working with teachers around empowering them to select courses, things of that nature, I think was a part of that discussion about high academic achievement. When I moved here from Oregon, I had the opportunity to start Rock Canyon High School, which I think is one of the top high schools in the state. And I think that the big thing that we did there was really try to tailor what we were doing in that school to what kids need and what parents needed, and also the staff that we had in that building. So a couple examples, for instance, the science department. When I hired the department lead for science, one of the things that we decided we wanted to do based on the students that we were having coming into that building was have biology be one of the key classes that were offered to freshmen. And it's because we knew the scores of the students that were coming into our building, and the discussion was about where do we want to be in the end. We wanted to have kids have access to AP courses, concurrent enrollment courses, electives, all of those things that make science come alive for students. So we knew that the base courses that we had to make sure that students had were things like biology, chemistry, physics, those courses that all students need to be successful. The other part of the discussion was with the middle school about, okay, if we want to start students in biology as ninth graders, what do we need to do with middle school kids to have them be prepared to step into that? What would be the science requirements? What would be the things that kids need to know and be able to do in order to be successful in biology, so we're not setting students up? The other piece is, what about the students that couldn't take that class? How do you serve them? So there were students that needed, at that point, introductory to physical science. So we had both of those programs as ninth graders for students to be engaged in, and then that program grew from there. But it was about personalizing that to the school and working directly with the teachers that were delivering instruction to get to high academic achievement. It's also about building a culture with students. So they're interested in, here's what my goal is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Why is what I'm doing right now important? And how can I develop a personalized path to get there?
So let me expand on my question a little bit. What you're saying is very qualitative to me. From what I've heard from Whit, we did a whole presentation, a 10-minute presentation, did a full 30-page report on full-day kindergarten, and what he wanted to hear was data. I want to hear numbers from you on academic achievement, because numbers are not good enough, you know. Unless Ken Witt hears numbers, then it's not good enough. So if he's saying that you have a good record of academic achievement, there must be some numbers that you can share with us to show that you brought us from here to there, because qualitative doesn't cut it for Kenwit. So if it doesn't cut it for him, then I want to hear the data numbers.
Sure. So in my most recent experience, we have had a big discussion about that because there was a concern about the impact of moving to a different schedule in our high schools, how that was influencing student instruction and maybe being detrimental to them. So we're talking numbers like the number of AP courses that students had access to, the number of threes in AP courses, how did that change over time? The ACT scores, how did that change over time? The opportunities for concurrent enrollment, how did that change over time? So it was a wide range and a balanced perspective of looking at numbers. Obviously, TCAP is a part of that discussion, but TCAP's going away this year. So what's the next place that we have to go to try to find to ascertain student achievement and performance? And I think that's a discussion we all have to have is, what does it mean to you as a teacher in a classroom? What does it mean for kids to grow and achieve in your classroom? Because remember, a part of Senate Bill 191 is student growth and achievement. To me, it's not fair to take one test, one time, and say, this is the best we can do to ascertain a teacher's performance. I think we better find out ways that we can personalize that to you so that you're engaged in that conversation, not only from a big perspective of how our school's performing, but also an individual perspective of how kids are performing in your classroom. And those are big discussions to have. And I don't pretend to have all the answers for every single discipline, for every single type of teacher that we have in this district, but I do know that having the conversation, having teams of people have those discussions, and having you be a part of that while following state law, because I believe Senate Bill 191 says you have to have a certain portion of a state assessment within there. It doesn't have to be all that. So specific numbers, those are pieces that you would want to make sure you pull out based on where people are moving forward.
Okay, you bring up pay for performance. Another I'm very concerned about this. Now, Senate Bill 191 doesn't say it has to be tied to their compensation. And what I'm hearing in this district is that we're talking about pay for performance. And I know from having kids that I have a huge impact on their ability to learn. If I don't work with them, if I don't work with them at home, or if kids are worried about whether they're going to be, where they're going to sleep tonight, or whether they're going to have dinner. There are so many impacts on a child's ability to learn that are completely out of the ability of the teacher to control. They could be the best teacher in the world, but if they've got a child that has a horrible home life, their performance as far as test results are not going to be reflected in that. So I have a huge concern with moving towards a pay for performance compensation system. So do you influence the board, or the board's just gonna say, we want to do pay for performance and you have to implement that? Or-
I hope I have an opportunity to influence that discussion. I think there's been a lot of lessons learned, and I think that from what you just talked about, it's more than just achievement of students. It's also about growth over time and being able to demonstrate that. But I think it's also about the expectation you have from students, and a student from this background and the expectation around, I don't believe that student should learn or could learn or would learn at the same level as a student in another type of student. I think obviously you have to put resources towards supporting all students. And so I think we absolutely have to have the expectation that every single student can learn and grow and achieve, and then we work from there on personalizing that. I believe there's a lot of great teachers in any district that can influence student learning, and I think our discussion has to be around what are we going to hold all students to, and then how are we going to help all students get to that. And again, when I talked earlier, one of the things that's influencing schools right now is there's $100 million in negative factor that's not flowing into Jefferson County. So how can we as a collective group have those discussions to influence the legislators to get those dollars back in our schools? $100 million of ongoing money would make a huge difference. It's not going to make the problem go away, but it still would be around how can we fix one school at a time, one classroom at a time, and work with teachers around that. I believe it has to be a balanced perspective and it has to be fair. Now, those are huge discussions to have moving forward, because what I think is fair and what others think is fair, that's a discussion that we have to have.
I'm gonna ask one more, because I'm sorry to be a hog, but the balanced and fair piece. And I know Terry brought this up with her question with you. We've been having this discussion about full-day kindergarten, and there's a huge division occurring that I hate to see in Jeffco between charter parents and teachers and neighborhood schools. And I think some of that is coming from the inequalities on several different fronts. And one of the ones that we've run into, that Carrie alluded to as well, is that we've got Collegiate Academy, who just received a $400,000 loan. They're now offering free full-day kindergarten in the South area. Nobody else in the South area is offering it. I'm seeing kids already from my elementary school that have already been enrolled in our full-day kindergarten program leaving to go to Collegiate because they can get it for free. They're saving $3,000 a year, $300 a month. So how is that fair? They also have, I was looking at their marketing plan. We don't have a marketing plan for Mount Carbon Elementary School. And I don't have $15,000 allocated for this year and $16,000 allocated for next year for my marketing strategy plan to be carried out. They allocate $8,000 of their budget for a marketing coordinator. They say right there in their marketing plan that their biggest competition is the neighborhood schools. And what bothers me about that is that is creating the divide. When we've got charter schools that can use that $400,000 for whatever they want. They decide they want to offer free full-day kindergarten. I'm certainly not saying that they shouldn't offer it. I think we should all be able to offer it, but we're being told that we can't offer it at our schools. So I feel like the board is causing some of this divide by allowing charter schools to have their cake and eat it too. And I can't ask for a loan. I'm about to ask for it at the next board meeting. I'm going to ask for a loan from Mount Carbon. I'm putting it together. I want this. I need this at my school. I'm a parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a principal. I'm a parent of these two kids. And I am really discouraged and upset about the divide that this board is causing between charter parents and neighborhood parents. I don't think it needs to be that way. We all want the best for our kids. All of our kids are worth an equal amount. Nobody's saying that they aren't. But we just need it to be fair. I want to be able to offer, I don't want my kids, my school suffering because their, per pupil funding is following over to a charter school. So what are you going to do to ease that strain between our parents and to fix that problem?
So I think we need to find a way to have a win-win. And, there's a lot of different ways to approach a problem. And I think you take the dollars and you find the best way that's going to encompass the most kids. From what I understand, the way that it was presented, I think that there may have been an opportunity for inequity from school to school because there was certain schools that were going to have it and certain schools that weren't going to have it. Well, there's still students that have needs in every one of those schools. So are there other ways that you can provide those opportunities? One of the other discussions that was happening at the legislature was about providing full-day kindergarten for everyone. So if those dollars would have came forward, how would that have addressed the need here? So I think the first part of that question is we as a community have decided that we want to have full-day kindergarten. It has to be equal for everybody. How do we approach that and try to find a way to make that happen? So I just found out Saturday afternoon that I was a finalist for this position, so I don't have the answer today moving forward, but I can tell you that one of the things that I'm committed to is trying to seek a win-win around some of these issues. And what those look like, that's for all of us to decide moving forward.
This table's gonna have one more question, then we're gonna move back here. So is there somebody besides?
I have just a global question.
Terry, have you already asked a question?
I did. It's a really good question.
See if your table mates would prefer to ask the question instead.
You.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Terry. Go.
So my question is, you were an administrator in Jeffco before the reform movement in Jeffco.
Yeah,
In Dougco, I'm sorry. And so, can you help us understand what that experience was, sort of what your role was in that? You know, I saw you on a news thing from last year saying, well, we lost 25% of our teachers at the high school, but that's pretty normal. That seems really high to me. And so, you know, you've kind of walked through this. What can you tell us to alleviate our concerns about moving down a path that clearly this community doesn't want to move down?
So the first thing is, I don't believe the number was 25%. I believe that number, if you look at the CDE website and you look at the number that was from 2012, because that's the most recent number that was on there, was about 12% for Dougco, and that was very similar to what was happening in other districts. Now, what happened in our school district is there was pockets of places where there was issues. So for instance, at one specific high school, there's a very popular principal that went to another district on a pay raise to be an executive director of high schools. When that building principal left, there was a group of teachers that I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it wasn't because of some of the things that were going on, but I also would like you to understand that there's some people that wanted to take control of their own destiny. So they made a decision to seek a job in another district. The same thing is happening in this district. There's people that come from this district and go to another district and get a pay raise because of the pay freeze that you've had. And so I get the experience, the years of experience moving to another district, and I may get a higher salary. That's a similar thing that was happening in Dougco. So we had people that were on a 4-year pay freeze, and there was people that we were bringing into the district 4 years later that were getting a higher salary. And the way that we tried to approach that was to try to bring those people along faster that had been underneath that 4-year pay freeze and the people we were bringing in. And so I think that was part of the challenge, but the number was not 25%. And the number for last year has not been published yet, so I don't know what that number is.
But what about the community? I mean, I've seen, you know, board meetings went from 300 people to 87 people because the board didn't want to hear what the community had to say. We have a community that has a lot to say here. And so as superintendent, how can we have our voices heard? I mean, we're fearful. Do you see people are fearful? So what, as our superintendent, what can you do to alleviate our fear?
Well, again, I think one of the things that I do best is listen to what people have to say and try to fold those into decisions moving forward. So in a school or in a district of 85,000 kids, that's a lot of people. So how can we break down those silos and have opportunities for genuine discussion at buildings that ultimately makes it to the district level? So, you know, can we use our district accountability committee? And I apologize, I don't know the name of that here, but the notion is you have people from buildings that are a part of that discussion that can bring individual concerns from buildings. Obviously, you have an ear on the ground with the building principal and teachers in a building. I'm one person, and I think it's important that if we're going to move forward, we have to approach this as a group and as a team and try to make a commitment to each other that we're going to try to move this forward. We could fight until forever and not reach any resolution, or we could try to find some common ground and move forward and say, here's some goals we're going to go after and get some quick wins moving forward, and then we build on that momentum. And that's the only way I know how to do it. Everyone in this room is responsible for the climate in this district, just like everyone in the room is responsible for or in another room is responsible for the climate of that district. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think that that's one of the things that needs to be improved across the nation. If you really look at it, there's a lot of school districts that are in this place where people are not feeling empowered, they're not feeling heard, and part of it is because of the money, but the other part of it is we have to find ways to make that work. I'm open for having that conversation. I don't have all the answers, and I hope no one came here today to say, wow, this guy's going to have all the answers. And I would be shocked if there was anybody that was in the pool that has all the answers. I just don't believe that happens, because what you do is you tailor those opportunities to the district that you're in, and all you can do is make a commitment to, I'm going to listen, I'm going to try to make things happen moving forward. And I know that's not enough for some people in this room, and I apologize, but I don't think anybody that came in here and told you that they had the silver bullet to make this work is lying to you. And I know you know that, because many people in this room have been in this business for a long, long time. And so you can't do it all by yourself. And I realized that very, very early in my career. You can't make decisions and walk away from it and go, well, that's the way we're doing it. You better be able to talk about why we did that, what the data is that supports that, why is that the best decision for us as a group. But we all have to compromise. We're not all going to get our way every single time.
I just think the divisiveness has really only been in the last 6 months. The climate has changed dramatically. And that's, you must know that because you live here.
Well, if I didn't believe I could make a difference in that, I wouldn't have thrown my hat in the ring. And so, this conversation has been about the last 3 days for me because I've had a full-time job in another district. And so I am very interested in trying to move forward with this district and make this a great place for kids. And I hope every single person in this room, irregardless of what's said in here, I believe everybody in this room wants 85,000 kids to have a quality education and 14,000 staff members to have and feel safe and secure and have a voice.
I'm going to move back to this section right here. Me standing and where Bill is at this table. Right in here. Do you have questions? This section here. Go.
I've got a question. In our neighborhood, where we have kids going to all these different schools, I also, obviously, we did some option schools. But how do you maintain those, how are you going to make sure that those neighborhood schools are maintained and excel at the same ability that those option schools or those charter schools are? Because they are the heart of the community. How will you make sure that if you want to expand that choices, that we still keep that excellence here at Wheat Ridge?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think the answer lies within the equality of funding to those programs. And so having a discussion about what's going into these different buildings and having the expectation that, for one school, it has to be at least appearing to be equal to another school, and having a discussion about how do you support all schools. And so, again, I don't have enough background in this district to be able to answer that question specifically about funding, but I do know that one of the things that's happened over the last 2 years now is there's been increased funding from the state coming back into districts that everyone was severely hampered by the budget cuts that started happening about 2007. And it became this watering hole mentality of, here's how much money we have, and everybody started looking across the pond going, well, if they weren't here, I'd have more money. And so I think we have to have some discussions about what do we hold dear as a community in terms of options for kids. And I think really, I respect the parents' choice to make a decision about where their kids can go. Colorado law supports that as well. And so if we have great programs in schools and we have great principals in there and great teachers that are providing those options for students, funding-wise, we have to find a way to solve that problem. And again, I don't have the silver bullet on how to do that other than we have to start identifying some priorities and moving forward and be willing to compromise if someone else thinks that the priority is different.
So let me ask you on how do you expand that? Jeffco is a much more diverse economically and racial, et cetera, type of community than Douglas County is. How do you make sure that the kids aren't left behind, that are challenged and are stuck where they are in those schools compared to those kids that get the option schools and charter schools?
So I think that with those students, there's also dollars that come in the form of Title I, additional grants. Obviously, the funding for Jeffco, I believe, is about $1,000 more per student in Jeffco than it was in my last district. And you're right, there is such a diversity here. But I think the other opportunity is to talk about what do kids need in classrooms and how can we direct those dollars to the places where it's going to make the most difference for students. What are the programs? What are the opportunities? And, again, I have had experience with that in my past district. And I think it really comes down to looking at student needs individually, building by building, and trying to leverage the dollars that you have to make that happen. It's trying to find ways to save money in other accounts so you can direct those toward needs. So for instance, if transportation, let's just say that gas prices drop, and we thought that there was going to be $4 per gallon. I don't know how many millions of gallons Jeffco uses to transport, but if we thought it was $4 per gallon, way over here, and now at the end of the school year, it's not $4 per gallon, or the average was less, there's a savings there. So what do we do with that money? Where does that money go? And that one-time money, can we direct that toward programs in buildings? Doing that, you have to be cognizant that if you buy ongoing things with one-time money, there's going to have to be a cut at a later time, or you're going to have to fully divert those dollars. But I think it's about trying to find dollars within the system that we have to direct toward those things that we want to see happen based on priorities.
Okay, other question in this group? Yes, go.
Hi, I noticed that your kids, you have kids in Jeffco, but you.
I have one.
In
My
Jeffco.
son graduated.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you work in another district, but you have your children here in Jeffco. I think that says a lot. I was just wondering about, I have a friend that's, her children are in Jeffco. How class sizes have changed, what kind of benefits that's happened about, since that change has happened? In the high schools particularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's no secret, one of the decisions we made was to go from a 5 of 7 schedule, which means that teachers taught 5 classes out of a 7-period day, to a rolling AB block, which was 6 of 8. That increased the load for teachers in some cases, but in many cases it drove down the class size. And so I have the data from the last 3 years. I dumped that from Infinite Campus, and I have every single teacher in Douglas County and the course loads that they had and the number of kids in classes. There were some places where teachers had additional loads. And what I mean by that is when I was a high school principal, we had a commitment that there was no more than 27 kids in a chemistry class for safety reasons, right? And so if I add another class to a chemistry teacher, their load over those 6 periods would increase. Now, in other classes, that load decreased. But overall, in the system, I believe that number was about 4, is what happened across our entire system. So we're talking 9 high schools, thousands of sections, and really the genesis of that conversation was sitting at a student advisory group meeting in September before the year we implemented, and having students say, "You got to be kidding me, I have 45 kids in my Spanish class. And what are you going to do about making a difference here for me?" That piece also coupled with what was happening at the elementary schools with an elementary teacher in our district having 40 minutes prep time a day and a high school teacher having a different amount of prep time a day. So there was always that discussion about how are you going to equalize the prep time, because an elementary teacher has a very different reality than a high school teacher, but they all deserve to have prep time so they can prepare quality lessons. So driving down class size was one of the things we wanted to accomplish with that. Maintaining opportunities for students was another important part of that. We had seen an erosion of programming because building principals, in an effort to keep math, science, English, social studies at a certain level, were cutting other classes. And so I may not offer business classes or art classes, as many as I had in the past, because I wanted to make sure I kept 30 kids in the classroom at a building. So that was another part of the discussion. So it wasn't about we're going to try to increase the workload of people. It was about trying to, how can we do something at the high school level that, oh, by the way, will also make a difference at the elementary, because we didn't have to cut as much at the elementary, and we'd already seen over 5 years doing the same cut level-wise from high school to middle school to elementary school, that we were losing programming in the elementary schools. And so the decision was, can we make this change and work with people around making a difference at the high school, but also maintaining programming at the elementary school. And so what I can tell you now is this last year, due to increased funding back from the state, buildings now have an opportunity to decide what schedule they want to run. So the 4 Highlands Ranch high schools are all going back to the 5 of 7. They have the dollars to do that. They feel like they can support that. We put criteria around that and said, you can do this, but you can't have more than 30 kids in a class, because we didn't want to get back above that. You can't cut programming in order to get to 5 of 7. Those were 2 big things that we wanted to make sure happened for students. Some of our other schools stayed at 6 of 8 because they are going to study that next year, or they feel like that's the best schedule for them. And so going back to the place where an individual building makes a decision based on the dollars they have, I think is a really important notion. And having a collective discussion in a building about what we want to do with the money we have was really important for our school district. I think that's important for any school district. When I was a building principal in Oregon, I didn't have that latitude. You get X number of staff based on 22-to-1 or whatever that ratio was, which really wasn't 22-to-1, by the way. And then you get X number of dollars per kid that you can have in resources. So what it really meant was you got $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 to spend on resources a year, and then you had your staffing, and you didn't have any flexibility. Doing site-based budgeting the way that we do in my current district has led to a lot more flexibility for building principals to make those decisions and tailor that to their individual building.
Thank you. 10 minutes for this group back here, and then we've got this little group up here.
We had another question
5.
here. We only had one question here. He's got a question.
Oh, sorry, you had 2.
Hey,
You had 3, actually. Two from her and one
Thanks.
here.
Yeah,
But
just
go
wrap
ahead.
it up then, 'cause there's lots of people.
Make it quick.
All means all, right?
I'm trying.
So just a couple things. Last year in 2012, I understand that there was 0 community engagement meetings that were offered by the board. There were 2 minutes to speak when there were offerings for public comments and about 30 minutes per meeting total. And also that in 2013, there was no parent survey that was offered. And so when you talk a little bit about the transparency piece and the community components, can you talk a little bit about the reasons why it was decided to make those decisions?
So to not have a survey, that was a Board of Education decision. On the heels of that, there was also the TEL survey that I'm sure all of you participated in this district, that gave information about individual buildings, that we used that moving forward. So the TEL survey was administered to all teachers. In terms of community engagement, while the change was made at the board meeting around what they wanted to do or what they didn't want to do, there was also a ramping up from our communications department of telephone town halls, of going out to buildings and having site-based building meetings with administrators from the district and having discussions about priorities. I personally engaged in 18 to 20 discussions at individual buildings about priorities and about the strategic plan and moving forward, what was important, what wasn't important. We ramped up what we were doing in our DAC, or what you call SPAC, I think I heard somebody say, so that parent engagement at the DAC was increased and that people would go to the DAC and they had specific topics they wanted to talk about. So for instance, just this last week we did a whole discussion about the administrator evaluation tool, which the DAC has to be engaged in making discussions about that or having input into that. So prior to that, there was a canvassing of the different SACs, our school accountability committees, around review this document and give us feedback around how this document works for you, and do you think we're holding principals to the right things, right? So had that discussion, all that feedback came back to the DAC, had a discussion at the DAC about how is this instrument working moving forward. That information will be folded into any discussions this summer about how to change that instrument.
I really need to have your other people here ask some questions as well. Okay, back here.
Yeah, what do you find most gratifying about working in the field of education? And what do you think a superintendent can do to have the biggest positive impact on this district?
Right. So for me personally, I think the most gratifying thing about working in the field of education is seeing a kid being successful. And so having a kid leave from your system and get to go make choices about what they want to do, and none of us will know how that turns out for 10, 15 years down the road. But I think the important thing is, did we provide them as many opportunities while they were in our system? And so be it a teacher, be it an administrator at a building, be it a district office administrator, what kind of things are you doing with the dollars you have to provide opportunities for kids? I know when I was a building principal, the most gratifying moment for me was when kids walked across the stage and I knew that I was the last person to touch their hand. I think that's tremendously powerful for kids to feel, you were with them for 4 years and they were successful in your building, or they were going on to bigger and better things. So I think if the other part of your question was what will I do as a district administrator to make that happen?
No, I mean, just philosophically, what do you think of the best strategies that superintendents can have for good impact on this district?
Well, I think finding great people and empowering them, developing teams that address issues, trying to seek a win-win. I mean, those are things that come right off the top of my head about how do you engage people moving forward so that they feel like they're part of the discussion, knowing full well that we're going to act as a team in the end. I mean, I think those are things that come right off the top of my head. I know that the most important transaction that happens in this district on a daily basis is what happens in the classroom. So from my perspective, the district office exists to support what's going on in classrooms. So how can we develop teams at the district office that are going to impact that? And then how are we going to get the data to make sure that what we're doing is actually having an impact?
Another question back here?
I actually just a commentary, I guess, there. We do already have teams in Jeffco and some really phenomenal people. So I mean, I think as you're coming in, when you're saying develop teams, the teams are in place for you. So I hope that's not I'm getting ready to clear everybody out and start over. Okay.
And again, I was speaking from my experience and his global comment about what do you think the superintendent does to influence what's going on in schools. I wasn't speaking about any plans to do anything. In fact, I've already had an opportunity to talk to Terry and Marcia, and what they presented with me, I think is absolutely the right path to go moving forward, and I'm looking forward to working with them around how can we influence instruction and performance in individual classrooms and in buildings, leveraging what we have at the district
That was
office.
just a clarification. I
Okay.
really kind of just wanted to give you a what if. If, let's say Ken Witt or Brad Miller were to walk into your office, and you're the superintendent, so if they were to walk into your office and give you a directive on some changes or something that they wanted to do, what would your next steps be? How would you go about that?
Well, I guess I want to make sure I understood why that was important to do that, and I want to understand the information behind that showed that that was the best possible path to take. And so, again, in the end, I'm employed at the mercy of the school board, but I think part of my role is to try to influence those discussions and those decisions. So I would be asking, how is this going to get toward those goals that you're going to hold me accountable to? So if achievement X is what you want, how does doing this get us there? And is there another way to do that? And do I have the latitude as a superintendent to make that happen? And can I make decisions, just like we ask and empower building principals to make decisions in their building, would I have that same opportunity?
And I would just make one comment, just make sure you realize you have a 5-member board. So if you get that directive, it should come from the 5-member board.
We'll have, we have 2 up here, so we're going to give them 5 minutes. So for sure 1 more, and we'll try 2 more back here. Go, Jonna.
So I guess to start, I would say that I think it's interesting that you're a parent in the district and that you've applied for this position in the district, and you don't seem to be that familiar with the community survey results of the budget. And I guess what I'd like to know is, do you plan to do that, make yourself familiar with the results of that? And because I was going to ask you what you thought about the results of that community survey.
So come to the meeting at Carmody on Tuesday, and I will have that information. And, I'm sorry, Monday.
And what time is that meeting?
I believe it's at 6:30.
4:30. I just wanted to curious, did you participate in it?
No, I did not. I did participate in one of the budget meetings where there was discussions about what the results from that survey.
Any more back there?
It is 4:30, correct, the meeting on Monday? Okay. I know it had been advertised in one place as 6:30.
Is that accurate? 4:30? 4:30. Okay, yeah, We've got 2 over here, so.
So I heard you talk about
Should have had your table mate.
team
I asked
working
him any
together.
questions.
Totally believe that is true. Someone in this room said it very well. You still come into a beehive. Teachers are very, very unsettled. I'm actually not a member of the union. There's so much finger pointing going on in both directions. And I am seeing really good teachers leave. They are stuck on that plateau. They're that 5, 6, 7 year point, making tons more money in other districts as they leave. So since teaming is one of your priorities, how do you see yourself getting us back together where we're a cohesive unit working together to help kids be successful when it is so contentious right now?
So I think that's a great question. I think we all own that moving forward. And so I believe that all I can be is the person that I am moving forward and try to listen to people, try to work with people, try to build groups moving forward. And that's a two-way street. And so if we're all going to continue down this path of pointing fingers and doing all that stuff, that's going to be a really tough road to moving forward. And again, I don't think I have the silver bullet alone. I think that's collectively our work together moving forward. And I think that's the most important piece moving forward is how can we reach some consensus about the items that we want to move forward, and can we find some ways to be successful in small ways so that we can get to being successful in big ways. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you again, I don't have the answer. But what I do know, what has been successful in my past and being a part of successful teams, is that people are invested in that. They have an opportunity to have their voice at the table. They understand that they're part of a bigger team, and that's the best that we can do. And we have to develop trust. And the only way you do that is one day at a time by engaging people individually and in small groups and working toward that. And we're all responsible for that.
Okay, we're going to have 3 more questions. This gentleman right here who's been very patient, Kelly, and then the woman here who had to take her daughter to the bathroom. I promised her she would get the last question. Go.
Very quickly, I'm a student of Jeffco. My kids went through Jeffco. I have grandchildren in Jeffco. I taught in Jeffco for 32 years. Retired, went on to another career in secondary ed, just like you. I guess I'm not going to ask you questions. You have been asked a lot of questions. I'm going to say to you, I think you have come into an absolute limit, sir, and I hope that, you know, I think they did a very big disservice by not at least picking 2 candidates to allow the public to look at. It puts an inordinate amount of pressure on you. I think you've done an admirable job this afternoon in terms of trying to answer people's questions. I think you've dodged a lot of things. I don't agree with you on many things that you have said, but I guess I would just maybe ask you to consider 3 or 4 things. One, as you go down this road, first of all, I think it's imperative that you become the change agent, if that is possible, to unite the board, to bring that organization together. I would urge you to go back and read. There's a very good article that was written by 10 former school board superintendents about transparency, collective work, and all of that. Again, a lot of things have been brought up tonight regarding concerns over, and my big concern still yet is Brad Miller, the hiring of him. It was in violation of sunset laws. Those things that, you know, his monthly invoice to the district is totally redacted. We don't know what that gentleman is doing. He is making $90,000 a year minimum with an additional $225 per hour and 53 cents a mile to drive from Colorado Springs. And he's already totally involved with charter schools. That just does not speak well for transparency and openness. And again, this is part of what you're hearing in this room. This is why folks are that upset. I truly feel that this board has dismantled in 6 months what some of us spent 30 years trying to build. And it breaks my heart, sir. And I am going to charge you. I'm going to charge you because I think this is a railroad job. I mean, it's a done deal. You are going to be the superintendent of schools. I think that's a given. My hope is that you can bring us back together and unite us, and let's stop. I agree with you. The bickering needs to stop. We need to do what's best for all 85,000 children. But people are not listening, and that starts from the board. The lack of civility and discourse has been fostered from there, and I would urge you to go look at some of the Transparency Jeffco videos of prior board meetings. If you haven't been, sir, I'm here to tell you that will be a jaw-dropping, eye-opening situation for you. Okay. I wish you all the best.
Okay, we have. This little child has been so patient to get the last question.
So I'm a parent of a preschooler and a kindergartner, and they're both currently in Jeffco Public Schools. She's in preschool. And right now, teacher morale is low. And I am fearful of teachers leaving, and of the teachers that don't, the really low morale. And I know surveys in Douglas County, after a lot of the changes were implemented, the teacher satisfaction dropped. So again, given that I'm just starting out, I'm in a school with a lot of good teachers. How are you going to turn around teacher morale so we don't lose a lot of good teachers and retain them and end up in a situation with high turnover?
So I think that I own the stuff that I've done for the last 4 days. I also own a part of being a part of the solution. And so I think all of us have to work together to try to bring that morale back around. Identify what the problems are, try to get some resolution on some of those issues moving forward as best we can. And, you know, I guess the only pledge that I can make is that I'm going to do my best to listen to people and to try to make sure that voices are heard and that moving forward, that perception or that piece is represented at the table. Now, you know as well as I do, that's going to be a challenge in a district as big as this. So how do we do that becomes the issue. But I am absolutely committed to making sure that your kids and everyone's kids have an opportunity to be the best that they can be every single day, and that teachers are a big player in that. That's where it happens, is in the classroom.
Yes, I think a lot of the divisiveness, teachers aren't feeling listened to, they're not feeling respected, and that's not what I want for the teachers of my children. I want them to be respected and valued and listened to, and that's have a good high morale and be good teachers. So I think that needs to turn around from what I've been seeing.
I agree.
Teachers and teachers.
Okay, thank you very much. So, I want to thank Griff for opening the school up. Thank you so much. Thanks to Communications. I have one more thing to say. Thanks to Communications for putting this together, getting all this stuff here and everything else. We have cards and a pencil. If you have another question that you want to have, write it down. If you want somebody to contact you, write your phone number and your name and give it to us on the way out. Okay?
Folks, I do have another meeting starting at 6.